So another day, another dollar. At least when it comes to sports games by the looks of it. And this time it's 2K21. So what have they done this time? Courtesy of footage uploaded by Steviva, we can now see that 2K21 has added advertisements during loading screens, and is absolutely the type of content that didn't exist during launch or the initial review process of 2K21. So it's another example of a game modifying its content, typically after launch or its review process. And this isn't exactly news either. This is becoming more and more common practice to employ these sort of techniques to publishers' customers. A perfect example of this, particularly from one of the more egregious publishers out there, was Crash Team Racing Remake, published by Activision. It was a game that released initially to really good reviews, but 1 month later they decided to introduce microtransactions, despite the fact that the developer had specifically promised before launch that that wouldn't be the case. And this is just it. It really does start to bring into question the sorts of expectations we now have around the review process. Software updates have proven time and again to be mostly beneficial. Just look at the new content that seems to be added into Call of Duty's Warzone all the time. Sure, there's an argument that some of the updates could push people towards a more monetized route, but there's no arguing that the addition of content is going to keep a user base actively engaged and willing to come back over and over again. And I think this integration greatly contrasts 2K21's recent patch, because it seems to be only there to make the publisher make more money. I mean, honestly, who wants to see adverts in loading screens? It just doesn't seem to really add much value for the user. Playing the devil's advocate in me could mean that sometimes adverts in a sports game makes it more realistic to today's standards, especially when mainstream sport games in real life kind of have these advertisements all over the place, but I don't think it's a particularly enjoyable part of the sport, and that's the reason why people buy these games in the first place, right? To play the fun part, not the boring part. So what does this all mean when it comes down to it? Well, I think there's a strong argument into the need for a more proactive approach to the review process in the future, as it seems companies are purposely leveraging the trend machine to bury anti-consumer updates amongst the more trending types of news. Now what this ultimately looks like is going to be pretty difficult because of the aforementioned hype and trend machine usually being responsible for what's being reported on. I mean, just look at me, I'm clearly just as bad for reporting on this topic. But I think we can all agree at the very least, looking at the Metacritic scores for this game, it's clearly already in the bad graces of the general public, and it could arguably be seen as to why it's a lost cause now to the developer. I mean, if your game is already in a bad standing, you might as well try and make a quick buck out of it, right? As a quick update, it looks like 2K21 has now responded with updates around the fiasco. Their tweet contains the following information. As many are aware, in recent years, ads have been integrated into 2K TV segments. Yesterday's 2K TV ad placement impacted our players' experience in a way we didn't intend, as these ads are not meant to run as part of the pre-game introduction. This will be fixed in future episodes. Thank you for your continued feedback. As much as I want to buy into this response, the logic doesn't quite add up for me. There's absolutely no way adverts would hang on a loading screen like that without developer input. Secondly, I don't think there's much excuse to be running adverts on an already full-priced game. The fact that the developers even considering implementing such a mechanic is already bad enough, I think, and harkens back to the original point I make around introducing updates after the review process, which could negatively impact the game. Either way, I think it's important to highlight these types of things, and that's just my opinion. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll speak to you next time.